World War II. The Germans are using ciphers to relay messages to troops outside of Germany. If the Allies want to win the war, they need some sort of strategic advantage. In Bletchley Park, Britain has gathered mathematicians to work on a top-secret mission to crack the code and win the war. Alan Turing was at the forefront of this group and headed the cryptanalysis of the Enigma machine, which utilized a polyalphabetic substitution cipher to create a ciphertext from plain text. To crack the cipher, Turing created a machine known as the British bomb, which identified the initial position of rotor cores and scrambler positions by analyzing demountable drums on the front of the bomb, which were wired identically to the connections made by Enigma's different rotors. But how did he get here? Alan Turing was born in Maida Vale, London, and attended his primary schooling at St. Michael's, in which he developed an overarching interest for science and mathematics. In his primary schooling, he witnessed the death of his best friend, Christopher Morcombe. These two students were one of the most talented in the school, and studied mathematical concepts well ahead of their curriculum. Unfortunately, Morcombe died from tuberculosis before he could attend college. His death encouraged Turing to pursue mathematics further, as that was what Christopher would have wanted. Turing later attended King's College in London, in which he published a number of papers in the field of mathematics. He later traveled to the United States to study cryptology in Princeton University. In the US, he published a paper titled On Computable Numbers with an Application to the Jungenstein Problem. This paper was created off the work created by Kurt Gödel, which sought to discover what the limits of proofs and computation were. Instead of utilizing Gödel's approach of pure arithmetic, he created what is known as the Turing machine. This was an abstract model that simulated the algorithm's logic. He went on to prove the concept of an undecidable problem by evaluating the halting problem in the context of a Turing machine. Alonzo Church later published a similar proof, but used lambda calculus to show the solution. Thus, the Church-Turing thesis was created, which proposed that the combination of Turing machines and lambda calculus were capable of computing anything that is computable or not undecidable. Along with this thesis, Turing published a dissertation to gain his PhD from Princeton University. This dissertation discussed the concept of ordinal logic and relative computing. In addition, Turing studied cryptology thoroughly. The education he received here set the basis for Turing's groundbreaking achievements in World War II.
World War II was a time of great strife across Europe. The battle for political control in the continent resulted in over 50 million deaths by the end of the war. As the war waged on, both sides attempted to use encryption and codes to send secret messages in their war effort. This led to the rise of an aspect of war that had never before been seen in such magnitude: code breaking. One of the great challenges for the Allied forces was the German use of the Enigma machine. This complex device allowed for messages to be sent in a seemingly unbreakable form of encryption based on the position of different rotors and plugs in the machine. A group of researchers gathered at Bletchley Park in England built up an extensive cryptanalytic capability. Called the Government Code and Cipher School, this team of highly intelligent mathematicians and logicians worked to break the secured German code of the Enigma machine. Initially, the decryption was mainly of German Air Force and German Army messages, as the German Navy employed much more secure procedures for using the Enigma machine. Alan Turing provided much of the original thinking that led to the design of the cryptanalytic bomb machines that were instrumental in eventually breaking the naval Enigma. However, the German Navy introduced an Enigma version with a fourth rotor for its U-boats, resulting in an extended amount of time during which these messages could not be decrypted. The Allied forces then captured relevant cipher keys and used much faster bomb machines of the US Navy, and were then able to efficiently and repeatedly decipher the more complex messages of the U-boats. Turing's help in decrypting the German code allowed many encoded messages to be intercepted and understood, enabling the Allied forces to defeat the Nazis in many important battles, most importantly the Battle of the Atlantic. In this way, Turing's work helped to shorten the war and saved over 14 million lives, and in the end, it led to the eventual victory of the Allies.
Could machines ever think as human beings do?
Most people say not.
You're not most people.
Well, the problem is you're asking a stupid question.
I am?
Of course, machines can't think as people do. A machine is different from a person. Hence, they think differently. The interesting question is, just because something thinks differently from you, does that mean it's not thinking? No, we allow for humans to have such divergences from one another. You like strawberries. I hate ice skating. You cry at sad films. I am allergic to pollen. What is the point of different tastes, different preferences, if not to say that our brains work differently, that we think differently? And if we could say that about one another, then why can't we say the same thing for brains built of copper and wire, steel?
And that's this big paper you wrote. What's it called?
The Imitation Game.
Right, that's what it's about.
Would you like to play?
Even after his revolutionary discoveries were attributed to him, his life after the war was grim and awfully court. Immediately after the Second World War, Turing lived in London, which is where he worked on the ACE, also known as the Automatic Computing Engine, at the National Physical Laboratory, a laboratory where measurement standards are currently set. The ACE was a stored program computer that could have been easily created much earlier with Alan Turing's knowledge, but due to delays in the project and Turing leaving to Cambridge in 1947 for a break year, the ACE was realized as a smaller version in 1950, which is named the Pilot ACE. On March 31st, 1952, Alan Turing was charged with gross indecency, which is essentially homosexual activity. After the police found out about his sexual relationship with the 19-year-old Arnold Murray, Alan Turing immediately pleaded guilty to his relationship and underwent chemical castration, a process of using drugs to reduce sexual activity and libido. In addition, court files from the case went public and exposed the shocking treatment that Turing faced in his court case. Due to this conviction, he lost his security clearance and had to stop working at the GCHQ, the continuation of the famed Bletchley Park, which was active in World War II. As his life spiraled downhill due to the chemical castration and an onset of depression, he ended up dead in 1954 with a half-eaten apple at his bedside. Although it is assumed that Turing committed suicide, it is actually unknown whether it was intentional or not. Although it was fitting that Turing committed suicide due to his depression, Turing performed lab experiments with very little regards to safety, so it could have been possible that the cyanide poisoning happened due to accidental ingestion. Several decades later, a formal apology was issued to Alan Turing in 2009 by the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Gordon Brown. 4 years later, in 2013, Alan Turing was given a royal pardon. The pardon was created by the Justice Minister, Chris Grayling, and it read, "Now know ye that we, in consideration of circumstances humbly represented to us, are graciously pleased to grant our grace and mercy unto the said Alan Matheson Turing, and grant him our free pardon, posthumously, in respect of the said convictions."
Being that Alan Turing was such an influential man of his time period, he most definitely made an impact on the future, specifically in the world of science. But even more specifically, Turing set the foundation for the future of technology, especially with computers. He had planned out a vision using his Turing test. This test was essentially a benchmark for the future, for not only the evolution of computers as they got smaller and smarter, but also for the future in which Turing predicted the rise of artificial intelligence, or AI. Turing made it his mission to democratize the world further, as he believed nobody should be excluded from information. He believed in the slogan, "Pursuit of Fact," which quite literally means that everyone should have the ability to find actual information on a topic they want to know about. This motive of his to help ensure that the future of computing was placed on a path free of government control was absolutely amazing. He believed that computing should be invented and innovated by everyday civilians who cared about human efficiency over their own power. Turing even applied his ability to break codes during the World War II towards creating a chess computer program to play against humans, which he knew could only be implemented in smarter computers of the future. However, he still created a program. In fact, his concepts came to life 46 years after his death, when IBM's Deep Blue chess computer beat the reigning world champion of the time using a slightly tweaked version of Turing's original code. As for impacts during the time in which he lived, Turing proposed and created a functional proposed electronic calculator, which he would later call the Automatic Computing Engine, otherwise known as ACE. To work on this project, Turing joined the NPL, otherwise known as the National Physical Laboratory. It was a prestige laboratory located in the UK, in which he partnered with scientists to bring his project to fruition. However, in 1947, Turing quit, leaving his plans behind out of anger, which allowed the National Physical Laboratory to finish the ACE project by 1950. Following the ACE project, Turing moved forward to building the world's first computer, along with another team of the world's brightest minds in the Mosaic project. Even though Turing passed away before he could finish his computer, he left behind detailed blueprints, allowing his fellow scientist Emma Biggs to finish the job. This computer proved crucial during the Cold War, as Britain looked to avoid being in the middle of crossfire between the United States and of the time USSR. Another interesting influence of Turing's would be the Apple logo. At the time of its founding, Steve Jobs and his partner Steve Wozniak, otherwise known as the Woz, debated heavily on what to call their adventure. According to how it is shown in the movie, based on Steve Jobs' life, Jobs just felt that Apple was a simple name that anyone and everyone would remember, allowing him to have a strong marketing presence. However, researchers have recently connected Turing to the name instead. Being that Turing was gay and persecuted for it as he lived on, he ended up killing himself by biting out of a cyanide-poisoned apple. Shockingly, the Apple logo is quite literally a partially bitten apple, and it would make sense for a tech company of this size to pay homage to the founder of it all. As you've seen, Alan Turing was a man on a mission. However, despite his genius and ability, Turing was treated appallingly by the government that he aided in World War II. It took over 50 years for a royal pardon to be given to him, yet his legacy was still recognized and praised, as he is considered one of the greatest theoretical computer scientists to have ever lived. His contributions to the field of computer science helped to advance the concepts of proving undecidable problems via the Turing machine. He set the basis for modern-day code breaking and made the first contributions to artificial intelligence with the development of the Turing test.